Renee, the lovely Renee Maranan. Hola, mi amor. How are you? I should say hola bonita, like my cup says, for anybody watching on YouTube.
Hello, how are you? I am doing great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I am honored and thrilled. I know that you are a busy lady, and we're going to find out all about the wonderful things that you are up to. But this is such a wonderful topic to talk about because I've even had people approach me like, so do you actually work with beginner singers or are you just like working with pros, and even amongst the professional singers that we get to work with, there's still some of the sentiment of they're either fighting some discouragement, they've experienced something discouraging in their career, they've taken a break, they've just made the courageous decision to restart, right? And when I think of someone who is full of compassion and encouragement and empowerment to walk singers through this, you're the first person I think of. So thank you again for joining me for this conversation and for joining our listeners. So yes, lady, tell us more about yourself.
That is so, first of all, I am so honored that when you think of things like that, I am the first to come to mind. That's definitely something that I aspire to, is to be a person who offers compassion, who accompanies people through those journeys. Because you and I both know, as performing artists ourselves, and as people who make a living in the performing arts, that it can be quite a lonely journey, a scary journey full of uncertainty. And it just really taps into so much of the things that make us feel so vulnerable as people. And so to be somebody who can offer that to others has been a really fulfilling part of my work as a vocal coach. So thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. But yeah, a little bit about myself. So hello, everybody. My name is Renee Maranan. I am a vocal instructor and a life coach. I am an ambassador and mentor teacher with the Institute for Vocal Advancement, which basically means that I have been teaching for a long time. And I am now also teaching and mentoring other teachers who are going through our accreditation and certification programs at IBA. I'm also a certified life coach. And so basically, my main focus has really been marrying the vocal technique as well as the mindset aspects of being a performing artist. And so this is everything, including from, like what you said, Melissa, overcoming challenges, overcoming discouragement, rejection, but also sometimes just getting really clear about your direction as an artist, what you want to do or what you want to do next, how you want to pivot, and all of that. So it's been a real pleasure to marry the two things together in my work. I really feel like I've found a bit of a sweet spot for myself. And so I'm really happy to be here to talk about that.
Renee, that's why I'm attracted to a lot of your work, because I know that I vibe a lot with what you say, what you share, the way you show up on social media is very similar to this, and even our, offline conversations as well, as we've gotten to know each other. And I think that's what attracts people to your work, is like, oh, I feel seen. She's just a fellow human. And you and I both believe in the power of authenticity with being open about our struggles and everything. And your work as a life coach, I think, is also what sets you apart too. Talk us through what led you down that path and how you've integrated it as a voice teacher.
Absolutely. Yes. Life coaching, I think, is something that came very natural to me, but the road was long for me to get to where I am now as a professional, as a certified life coach. It was something that really started as a young person. I had a lot of experience in my youth doing peer counseling, doing um, youth ministry, even at my church, and just kind of working with others and walking with other people through their journey in whatever setting I may have been involved in at the time, whether it be at school or at church. And then when I started teaching voice, it just became apparent that it was a part of my personality that just naturally showed through to bring out the best in other people by encouraging, empowering, validating, affirming, and asking questions that helped people to come to a clearer realization of who they were and what they wanted for themselves musically and in their performances, but often in their life as well. I have a lot of students who've come to me who've said, I come to voice lessons because obviously I want to be a better singer, but honestly, part of the reason I come here is because every time I talk to you, I just feel, like you said, I just feel seen. I feel heard. This is like the 30 minutes or the 60 minutes in the week where I get to talk to somebody who I feel I can really trust and confide in, somebody who makes me feel better about my life, about myself.
Mm.
And, a lot of people have, it came to a point where enough people had told me, hey, you should really think about maybe becoming a coach. When I just decided, maybe I should take that as a cue for my career, for my journey in my life. And I just took the plunge, went in there and signed up for coach certification training and became trained, became certified, and now here I am. It's been both very natural, but also it's funny the way that I look at it. It felt like it had been calling out to me for a very long time, but I didn't hear it for many years up until, it wasn't really up until a few years ago when I started training. And so, yeah, I've been doing it my whole life, but not professionally and officially until maybe 5 years ago is when I really started.
That's awesome. Had you experienced life coaching for yourself? Like, had you been a client before you decided? I mean, you took everybody up on their encouragement as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had various forms of coaching in my own life. Obviously, I had also had, therapy and counseling in my own life as well. And so I've received those kinds of services before. And it just was so natural to me to pick it up and then, bring it into my own work as a vocal coach. It's been a very interesting merger of the two.
Totally fine. I was just gonna make a joke about it.
My husband, my husband is heading to work, and
Sure.
the garage in our house is literally
Right there.
right next to my studio. And he's warming up his car. It was just kind of funny. I'm talking about my life purpose, and all of a sudden, this big rumbling sound comes from the garage, like a sign from heaven, follow your dreams. And that's like the funny thing about these things that I think is so reflective of our journey as artists, right? It's like no matter how well you plan everything, something always comes up and just throws you a curveball. Something like this, but also in our careers, like even as a singer myself, I had as a young person and kind of like growing up as an independent artist, um, I had a plan. I had these expectations of what I thought my career was going to be. And life just did not go the way that I was expecting it to. Surprise, surprise,
I'll hear it.
Yeah, how rude. Like I had an expectation, I had a plan. How dare you not fulfill my expectations? But that's just the way that it goes for so many people. And I think that one of the hardest things about being an artist and having a dream of being a performing artist is that for so many of us, it's a dream that we've held for so long in our hearts that we become so attached to this very specific vision of what our life and our career should be. And when it doesn't pan out exactly the way that we expect or hope that it would, it can be soul crushing. Or it can kind of send us in this spiral of, I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep going because there's this dream and I'm going to chase it. And it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to keep going for it. And then in the process, we kind of miss a lot of the other cues that have been going off around us and inside us, trying to point us in the direction of something more, something bigger, something more fulfilling, something that genuinely brings joy, because we were just so attached to this one specific vision that we had for our life. And so that, I think it's funny that it happened because my reaction was very comical, but it was a very human response. And I think that human response exists in so many of us. And one of the most important things that I do as a coach, but also this is internal work that I do for myself, is to cultivate that sense of openness and that sense of alignment with what is. What am I feeling in the moment right now? What is this experience showing me and teaching me about what I want, about what's available to me, about what's possible? And how can I avail of that with openness, right? And
Mm.
vulnerability and joy and just anticipation. You know, it's like opening a gift that you didn't expect to get. And then just that curiosity and that, you ever get a gift from somebody who just said, I just want to get you this just because. And you're like, I have no idea why. But for some reason, this is so much more exciting than when I get a gift that I totally knew I was going to get and a gift that I totally asked for and I knew exactly what it was going to be. But when you just get a gift out of nowhere and you have no idea what's under the covers, under the wrapping, right? There is this sense of anticipation and this bubbling sense of curiosity and joy. And also this sense of affirmation that I am worthy. I am worthy of being surprised and being gifted with whatever this is that's inside the package, right? And I feel like that joy is possible and available to all of us if we can just get out of our own way, right? And that's a lot of what I do vocally and also in my work as a life coach.
Yes. And I that the kid, it's the how, right? Because even in the way that you reframed life's curveballs, those plot twists is such a wonderful and loving, compassionate way of reframing that. You know, why do you think it is so scary for us to be vulnerable as singers? And this, I think this is the grand paradox for us as performing artists, especially if you're like a singer-songwriter type and sharing original work. You're opening up and you're saying, this is my baby, don't say my baby's ugly, you know? And so like we're willing to do that, but yet there is so we approach it a lot like a risk, and there's so much fear wrapped in that. And will they love me? Will they accept it? Will they get it? How do you walk through how do you walk your artists through these limiting beliefs and reframes? I mean, obviously it's not a magic pill, it's not a magic spell that can be done in 30 seconds or less, but what are some of those first steps for someone who's saying, I had a really traumatic performance experience, but I'm ready to get back on the proverbial horse? How do I do that?
Yes. And that is one of the most difficult things for people to have to overcome, especially if they're new or it was an especially traumatic event and they had some kind of experience outside of singing that already set them up for that limiting belief, like maybe in their family life or, in their social circles, where they were told messages about themselves that were especially damaging to their sense of self-worth, their self-esteem. And then it gets reinforced by this traumatic performance experience. It can be really difficult to bounce back from that. Actually, one of my current students went through something similar, and I had no idea that she did when I first started working with her. But what she told me worked really well for her was, first of all, that I met her where she was at. And I think that that's the first step, is acknowledging when we sense that one of our students, one of the singers that we work with, responds to something with fear, right? Or with hesitation. And we can sense that as teachers, right? When we give singers an exercise, we get them to work on a song, and they just kind of clamp up, they get in their way, they get in their heads. One of the things that I love to do is just to acknowledge that and say, that I'm noticing that you're kind of tensing up right now, why don't you tell me a little bit more about that, or what's going on for you there? What are some thoughts that are going on in your head? And allowing them the space to either acknowledge it and talk about it freely, or sometimes deny it. Sometimes they don't want to talk about it. But often what I find is that just verbalizing that, hey, I notice that you're responding to this with an energy shift or a physical shift or a vocal shift is enough to kind of prompt them to start to realize that somebody sees me in this moment.
Mhm.
Somebody is actually here with me in this experience. And it's amazing how much comfort and courage that engenders in a person who's in a room with you, just to feel that I'm actually being seen as I am, and that this person in front of me is not afraid to be with me in this moment, even when I'm being the way that I'm being, right? If I'm tensing up, if I'm screwing up this vocal exercise, if I'm forgetting the words because I'm so nervous, right? Or if I'm laughing uncontrollably because that's my coping mechanism for fear, she's not going to run away. She's not going to try to minimize this. She's
Mm.
not going to try to sweep this under the rug. It, whether directly or indirectly, communicates to the person, I see you and you're okay exactly as you are. The way that you're feeling is okay. The way that you're responding to this is okay. I am not going to run away. I am not afraid of this. I'll be here right in the room with you and I will walk with you through this. And that is an incredibly powerful gift that we can give to the singers that we work with, that I think so many teachers kind of take for granted, or they lose out on the opportunity because often we are compelled by this need to immediately fix or gloss over some of those uncomfortable moments in a lesson when we're working with a singer. But if we can just, first of all, do the work within ourselves
Yes.
to be comfortable with those spaces inside of our hearts, right? Because it starts in you. When we can do the work inside our own minds and our own hearts to be comfortable in vulnerability as a person on a personal level, then we are so much more able to sit with someone else when we are asking them to be vulnerable, right? And then we can create that safe space for them to be who they are and to feel what they feel and to actually then take greater risks, right? So that's the first thing that I love to do when I'm working with somebody who's running up against some limiting beliefs that were rooted in some old negative experiences. And then the other thing that I love to do is just bringing out some of their own strengths, right? And helping them to make the connection between a strength that they have that is already inside them, that they already know is there, that has already carried them through another experience in their life, and then helping them just to make the connection that it can be applied to this scenario as well, right? And that's a little bit more of a process
Sure.
that requires permission from the person that you're working with. Like, it, you know, they need to know that you're kind of helping them through this, right? It can't just be something that you sort of spring on somebody. But that also can be a really, really effective way of helping somebody to see that they're capable of overcoming, right? It's not that I'm imposing on them, hey, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, but it's more just a matter of helping them to reconnect with something that is already in them. Because I'm not going to be the one pulling them through these challenges when they come up. Like, I'm not always going to be beside them. They need to be able to see and understand that they can do it for themselves because they can, right?
I
Yeah.
love that. I absolutely love that. And even the space when they say, I don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know. I don't know. After I know I've found in my experience, both personally and professionally, when working with someone, that eventually a few weeks go by and then they all of a sudden they do know. They do remember, right? Because, like you said, you've created a brave space for them to explore that without judgment. And I think that's, I mean, empowering, especially when someone says, yeah, I'm ready to do this again, or I'm just ready to do this, period, you know?
Mhm.
So, in our world, authenticity is such a buzzword, right? Authentic, authentic, be vulnerable. You know, thanks to wonderful works like, you know, Brene Brown and some of these other authors and researchers who have shown us like the science as well as, you know, just the relational aspect of It's okay. It's okay to show up as your truest self. I'm curious, for someone who does work the way that you do it, what does being an authentic artist mean to you?
Mm, being an authentic artist, it is such a complex and nuanced idea. And I think that one of the ways that I think about it for myself is that authenticity is not a destination.
Mm,
For me, it's a journey, it's a process. Because at any given point, what is authentic to me might shift and change a little bit at a time, right? If you're thinking about authenticity and you're thinking about being true to who you are, sometimes people get this idea that, okay, it's this one set identity. My authentic self is this, and they come up with this picture, right? Labels, adjectives that describe who they are, a list of nouns that kind of describe what they are in the world and how they show up. And that's fine. And there are some things that are sort of more fundamental to our identity, but there's also a part of us that shifts the way that we feel, the way that we view the world, the lenses that we put on based on the circumstances that surround us. And that changes the way that we show up, the way that we communicate with others, the way that we feel. And I think that being authentic also has to do with acknowledging that those things shift and change, that we evolve, that we make mistakes, that we learn, that we grow over time. And that who I am right now at this specific moment in my life may not necessarily be the same as who I am going to be years down the line. And so I think for me, authenticity has to begin with an openness to what is. And again, I talked about this earlier today, right? A willingness to sit with yourself at every moment in your life and just observe. I love this one quote about meditation. I think it's John Kabat-Zinn who describes, the experience of meditation as sitting behind a waterfall where you've got the waterfall right there in front of you and it's the water is flowing down and you're sitting behind it, you're underneath it, but you're not in it, right? And so you have the space to sort of observe it. And and you have that sort of distance between you as a person and your emotions, your thoughts, all of the things that are going, the narratives going on in your head, and you just allow it to run its course. You observe it and you notice it and you allow it to be. And I feel like authenticity has to begin with that ability to sit with yourself, to sit behind a waterfall and to observe who you are in this moment. What are the thoughts going on in your mind at this moment? What are some of the emotions that you're feeling? And how are those thoughts and behaviors, those thoughts and emotions informing your behaviors in this moment? And what might that mean, right, for you? And I think that willingness to observe yourself, to accompany yourself with no judgment is the real root for me of authenticity. Because once you allow yourself to be observant and be in tune with what is about who you are right now, then you can really connect to it and express from that truth, right? To write music from that truth, to perform from that truth without having to put on whatever identity you had in your mind about this is me with a capital M, right? So if I was to say to somebody, I am Renee. I am somebody who's optimistic and upbeat, and I love to engender positivity and hope and joy in other people. I would say that that is true as far as like my fundamental personality. And I think that it generally shows in basically everything that I do. But I'm going to tell you, that's not who I am at every single moment of my life. I have seasons and moments when I feel sad and low and angry
Mhm.
and bitter and, insecure. and afraid. I experience all of those emotions. And it would be wrong if I was to feel something in a certain moment and think, I want to write about this. And then say, but wait, no, that's not who I am.
Hmm.
That's not me. That's not the foundation of my identity, the portrait of my authentic self. So I'm not going to write about that because that's not on brand for my authentic artist identity. Well, then am I really being authentic in that moment? Am I really honoring who I am? Right. So I think that that's, for me, when we talk about authenticity, that's what it means to me. It has to begin with the willingness to be open and non-judgmental and radically compassionate and accepting of yourself at every single moment, and allowing creativity to spring forth when it wants to from
Mhm.
any and all experiences and emotions that you have.
I think you just gave us. She got Flynn. Hold on.
See, radical acceptance.
I shall not.
Authenticity.
I shall not clear my throat. I shall lead by example. Well, I mean, what I was going to say is, well, thank you for that because we're keeping it real here. But you just gave us, I think, the key, which is a very fine line between honesty, authenticity, positivity that accompanies that, not toxic positivity that, you live in a pretend world. I think that's what rubs me the wrong way a lot, about this, and I'm all for meditation, affirmations, all that stuff, but it really does need to be grounded in truth, right? In your experiences. So I love how you walked us through sifting, you know, the opportunity to allow yourself to feel what is real, but that doesn't mean, it's who you are. And I think that protects us in the best possible way to move forward with art, with music, with singing that feels honest and true to us. Have you ever had a moment for yourself, either recently or however long ago, where that actually gave you some freedom in your own artistry?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was at a few years ago, before I'd had my daughter, I used to share music with a friend of mine who at the time was in seminary. And um, I would send him these audio clips of these songs that I'd written. And he would say to me, it infuriated me to no end because everybody loves my songs. Let's just say this already right now. Everybody that I share my songs with, they're always like, oh, this is so great. I love your music. So I kind of got spoiled by feedback like this because when he came back to me, he says, I feel like you're writing, but you're not really writing about what you want to write about. I feel like you're hiding something. And
Mm.
I'm going, excuse, how, how dare you? How dare you? And this is a friend of mine that I had known for so long. And he knows me, he knows me well enough to feel comfortable to say things like this. But also he knows me well enough to see through any of the layers that I may be putting on, right? And it took me a long time to even figure out what he meant. I mean, I thought I was writing authentically. I thought I was writing about what I really wanted to write about. But it wasn't until after I had my child in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, and the stress and the upheaval was so violent in my life at the time that it really forced me to find a new way of expressing my emotions, because anyone who's had that kind of cataclysmic event happen to them in their life, I mean, forget about the pandemic, but just that major life change of becoming a parent. And it's not just exclusive to becoming a parent. There's so many life events that are completely just life altering. They change the trajectory of your entire life, right? And that kind of upheaval and change is so dramatic. It really forces you into a violent tornado of emotions and thoughts. And if you don't find a way to express yourself in those events, it can really cause some serious damage. And that's what it did to me.
Mm.
I was so wrapped up in trying to maintain this. I've got it all together. I've got it all figured out. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to work my way through this. And I did. I was working my way through it, and I was, as best as I could, gracefully accompanying myself through that moment. Maybe gracefully is an exaggeration because I don't know how graceful I was in those seasons. But also there was absolutely a part of me that was completely out of control, completely out of control, because it was the only way I knew how to be in that moment, right? Like nobody knows, especially when it's your first child. I think a lot of people can relate to this if they've had children. But if it's your first one, there's nothing that can prepare you for that experience, right? And again, I'm saying this as somebody who went through that experience, but it can be applicable to so many other experiences, right? There is really nothing that can prepare us for these major life changes. And so, how can anyone expect you to get yourself together and to walk through that like you know how you're going to get through it? Like, I expected myself to know how to get through it and acted like I knew how I was going to get through it. But inside me, there was absolutely a part of me that was falling apart. Even as I was creating systems for myself to get me through it in a healthy and sustainable way, even with all of the knowledge and training that I had as a coach, I was still falling apart. So I had to find a way to express that. I was forced to express that, right? And in the process of, as I was sort of still in the process of discovering that level of authenticity in my expression, I went through a lot of physical challenges because I was working so hard to kind of protect and preserve this image that I had of myself as somebody who could get through anything and can overcome anything, right? That's actually where vocal condition started. I started to experience muscle tension dysphonia because I was so wrapped up in this, like, I was so anxious and I was so tense that it literally affected my voice. It physically affected my voice. And so there was a time when I couldn't get through the top of my chest voice into my first passaggio without completely clamping up. There
Mm.
was a period of time when my throat, like it literally felt like I had hands on my throat, just like choking me. Even when I'm at rest, I'm not talking, I'm not speaking, I'm not singing. And it
Right.
just felt like there was just this constant squeeze. Um, and it was all connected to this anxiety and this stress and this inner turmoil that I was experiencing at the time. And so that really, that really forced me into a conscious decision to, you know what, I need to figure out how to vocalize the way that I'm feeling. I need to figure out how to be more honest with myself and with other people, right? To actually put this stuff out into the world, whether it be through words, whether it be through actions or through songs. And that was what happened. So after going through therapy and speech therapy and massage therapy and going and working on all of those things to physically help me get better and to get to a state of emotional and mental balance, right? In the process of doing that, I was able to discover a deeper level of connection to my truth, right? Both truth with a capital T and also truth in every moment that I'm experiencing in my life, right? And just finding in me the permission to allow and to express what really is happening inside. It was tough, but, and I don't know if it made me a better artist. I mean, I don't know how many people would love the songs that I wrote during that period, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
It made me whole. So that's what's most important.
That right there, it made me whole. You feel like an integrated person now. And I think for the listener right now, that's right there on the teeter-tottering, right on that, do I, don't I, do I dare open my mouth again and let someone else hear my voice? That's it. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what are your intentions? What is your why? Why are you doing this? And I think to be able to say, I feel like a whole person is a level of freedom mentally, vocally, spiritually, physically, that I think all human beings, are worthy, of course, of living out that type of fulfillment, not free of conflict, right? Not free of hardship, but to know that you can ride those waves and still be you at the end of the day. Renee, this has been so empowering. Thank you so much. For people who want to work with you, where do we find you?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this has been such a pleasure, so much fun to be here. I'm so grateful that you invited me. And thank you to all the listeners who are tuning in or watching. I am so pleased to, have sort of met you and shared this message with you. To follow me, just follow me on Instagram, at Renee Maranan, and that's where you're going to find most of my content and free singing tips, mindset tips, inspiration, encouragement, and the occasional hilarious reel.
Yeah, occasional. Yeah, occasional. This woman makes me laugh in all the best possible ways when I watch her stuff. It is so good. Please go give her a follow. Before you go, I have to geek out a little bit because we both love our share of musical theater as well as pop and contemporary things. Nana, okay, so my lovely Renee Maranan is also a fellow Filipina who's amazing. I shouldn't say fellow. I say fellow because I have so many people I love from the Philippines that I feel like I don't know why
Well,
I said that.
and
I
it's
think
fun.
maybe Latinos and Filipinos we actually have some similarities.
That's I think that is what actually registered in my mind. Like Latinos and Filipinos have so much in common, everybody. Like if you have friends in your life who are either Filipino or Latino, like you would not, sometimes culturally, you would not know the difference because there's so much overlap in our cultures. And Melissa and I look nothing alike, but I can bet you we party the same. I can bet you we party the same.
Saving up my pennies so I can join you in Washington to party with you. No, no. So like I know I'm geeking out a little bit over Here Lies Love and
Mhm.
its Broadway premiere. I actually got to so when I did a regional production of In the Heights a few years ago, Ariel Jacobs was our Vanessa. She was the Vanessa to my Daniela. And so to know that she's gonna play the lead, I'm like, and this is premiere, right? The first Filipino cast. I mean, how are you? Your heart just must be racing every time you see some sort of piece of news or something.
My goodness, let me tell you. So when they first announced that they were going to put it on and that there was a casting call, I have a friend, Joaquin Pedro Valdez, who's actually a musical theater performer based out of in London. He and I both went to the same acting school that Lea Salonga went to as a child, right? And that was how he and I met because I grew up in the Philippines. And so he sends me this and he's like, "Did you see this? Did you see? Are you sending a submission? Because there is a global Filipino moment going on right now." And I was just so hyped up. And you know what my first response is? My first response was, "It's about dang time. It's about dang time."
You,
Let me
Lizzo.
yeah, and it's like, not that I'm saying that, there are so many things about the Filipino culture that I think is worth celebrating. And there's so much content to write about. There's so much music to write about. Historically speaking, culturally speaking, there is so much for Filipinos to draw from. It's about time that somebody put this together. Um, and I hope that this is just the beginning. And I am so excited for there to be a production featuring a piece of our history. Mind you, is it my favorite piece of history?
I was gonna say it's a little controversial.
Not really. And you know what the funny thing is? My family is actually related to the Marcos family. And so my
Really?
my maternal grandfather is supposedly a cousin to Ferdinand Marcos, who is Imelda Marcos's
Wow.
husband, right? Not that we share the same political beliefs, but that's not what the show is about, and that's not what I'm here to talk about. And we were definitely not close enough to them for us to rub elbows at family parties. No, it was like one of those things with just like a distant cousin twice removed or something like that. So I always think that that's kind of funny. But is it my favorite historical moment? Probably not. But I'm just happy that something is being put out there that features our people and our culture. But what I'm really excited about and so hopeful about is I hope that this inspires other Filipino creators, songwriters, playwrights, artists to create art that is inspired by our culture, that represents who we are to the world, and that shows people what we can do and what we're not that I think that a lot of people know what Filipinos are capable of. I think that a lot of people know we're amazing, right? but 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 I feel like for so long we have played sort of like second fiddle to a lot of the storylines that are being told in mainstream media and on Broadway. And I think it's about time we take center stage. And you know what? I would love for this to come from our own hands. I would love for there to be music and shows put on by, written by, composed by Filipinos, so that there can be a real level of not just cultural authenticity, whatever that means, because honestly, being a Filipino means that you have cultural influences from so many different parts of the world. There's like a European influence, there's American influence, there's Japanese influence and other Asian influences in our culture. It's really a true melting pot. Mm-hmm. So whatever that means to us, I think that whoever is out there thinking, I'm a Filipino and I want to create something that represents my culture, but what does that culture even mean? I've been reflecting on this, and you know what I've decided? It's just whatever it means to you. It's whatever culture means to you. If you're a Filipino American, that's your culture. If you're a true native Filipino living in Manila right now, that's your culture. Just speak from your own truth, speak from your own experience, your own life, and allow that to be brought to life. When I start seeing works like that, and I am not saying if, but I'm saying when, because I'm claiming it right now that it's going to happen. When I see something like that, when I see our own version of In the Heights, right? When our own Lin-Manuel Miranda starts emerging, right? To create great works, I am going to rejoice. I am going to rejoice because it's about dang time. It's about time.
To the men. A to the men, woman. I love it.